We need to talk about the disconnect between, having a gold record hanging on your wall and having your credit card declined at the grocery store.
Hmm.
Because in our collective imagination, making it in the music industry, you get the record deal, the videos on TV, the radio hits, that equals financial freedom, right?
It's the rock star myth, yeah.
Yeah.
We just assume that fame pays the rent. It has to.
Exactly. And today, we are going to tear that myth completely apart. We're looking at a band that is, I think, arguably the perfect case study for the brutal economic reality of the music business in the late 80s and early 90s.
The Northern Pikes.
The Northern Pikes.
A band that really did everything right. I mean, they wrote the hits, they played the game, they toured until they literally dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when they walked away from it all, they were arguably in a worse financial position than when they started.
But the story isn't just about bad contracts, which we will get into.
But we will.
It's about timing. It's about what feels like a cosmic joke. Because this band, they break up in June of 1993. They are done, burnt out, can't stand the sight of each other, and then, what, mere weeks later?
It's weeks. It's not months, it's weeks.
A song they record basically as they're walking out the door becomes the theme for the TV show Due South.
Which becomes this massive international phenomenon. 8 million viewers in the UK alone. It's the first Canadian series to hit prime time on CBS in the US. I mean, it was huge.
So you have this ghost band. They don't exist anymore, but their song is in millions of living rooms every single week. They completely missed the wave that could have made them global superstars.
Horror. And this is the question I think that we really need to chew on today. Did missing that wave actually save their lives?
That is the mission for this deep dive. We're going to look at the hustle, the unrecouped trap, and we are going to do the actual math on that, by the way.
Yeah, we have to.
And the alternate timeline of what happens when a working class band gets too famous too fast.
But to understand the end, you really have to go back to the beginning. You have to understand the isolation.
Okay, let's go to Saskatoon, January 1984.
Right. And you got to remember, Saskatoon in the 80s, it's not just about the weather, though the Told is definitely a character in the story.
Yeah.
Yes. It's about the distance.
Mm-hmm.
You are in the absolute middle of the prairies. Toronto, which is the center of the Canadian music industry, might as well be on Mars.
Right. There's no internet, no email. You can't just send an MP3.
No cheap long-distance calling, even.
Yeah.
So if you're a band in Saskatoon, you're basically operating in a complete vacuum.
Yeah.
So the Northern Pikes, they form out of the ashes of a few local bands. The Idols, Doris Day, 17 Envelope. You've got the core trio, Jay Semko, Brian Potvin, Merle Brick. And originally, Glenn Hollingshead was on drums, but Don Schmidt takes over that spot in '86.
So they're writing songs. They have this ambition, but how do you get heard? You can't just upload to SoundCloud. And this is where Jay Semko pulls a move that I think it's brilliantly bureaucratic.
It is. It's such a pragmatic, almost blue-collar approach to marketing. It's amazing. He realizes, okay, we need to get on the radio in America.
Sure.
He doesn't have a high-powered agent. He doesn't have a Rolodex. So who has a list of everything?
The government.
The government.
Yeah.
Specifically, the U.S. Library of Congress. So Jay writes a letter, like a physical letter with a stamp,
Wow.
to the Library of Congress asking for a list of every college radio station in the United States.
I love the image of some clerk in D.C. opening this letter from Saskatchewan and
Yeah.
just shrugging, photocopying a list and mailing it back.
That's pretty much what happened. They sent him the list. So the band takes their independent vinyl EP, seen in North America, which they press themselves, and they turn the band house into a mailroom.
Right.
They're stuffing envelopes, licking stamps, and just blindly firing these records into the void of the American college radio system.
It's a total numbers game. A shot in the dark.
A complete shot in the dark. And it paid off. They actually started charting. They were getting airplay in little pockets of the U.S. while they were still freezing in Saskatoon, purely because they utilized the postal service better than anyone else.
But you can't eat airplay stats. You have to play live. And this brings us to what you call the Trojan horse strategy.
Right. So you've got the Prairie Bar Circuit. And in the mid-'80s, if you wanted to be a working musician in Saskatchewan, you played cover songs. That was the deal.
That was the job.
That was the job. Club owners wanted to sell beer. They wanted people dancing to the top 40. They did not want to hear your introspective art rock originals.
You play originals, you get fired.
100%. But the Pikes needed to test their own material. They had to see if their songs would actually work on a live crowd. So they booked gigs as a cover band. They'd commit to playing 6 nights a week, which is an absolute grind, by the way, 4 sets a night.
Unbelievable.
Promising all the hits.
And then they just slip in the poison pill.
They were very clever about it. They would look at the architecture of a set list. You played a Rolling Stones song to get everyone up on the floor. Then maybe a David Bowie track. The energy's high, the beer is flowing. Then, without saying a word, they would slide in a Northern Pikes original.
Like, and here's a new one from, the Kinks.
Basically, they wouldn't announce it. They would just play it with the exact same conviction as the covers. And they just watched the dance floor.
That's the test.
That's the test. If the crowd kept dancing, they knew the song worked. If the floor cleared out, the song got cut from the list.
It's the ultimate focus group, a bunch of drunk Queriar patrons.
It's better than a focus group because it's completely honest. There's no filter. And because they were playing 6 nights a week, mixing their own stuff in with the classics, they got incredibly tight as a band. They were learning song structure from the masters by physically playing the chords night after night. By the time they were ready to showcase for a label, they were a machine.
Okay, so let's talk about that showcase. It's 1986. A guy named Robert Hodgins organizes it. And somehow they get Doug Chappell, who's the president of Virgin Records Canada, to fly to Saskatoon.
This is the miracle moment. You have to understand, record executives in 1986 did not fly to Saskatoon to see unsigned bands.
No.
They barely left downtown Toronto. For Chappell to get on a plane, fly to the middle of the prairies to see a band play a 20-minute set, that is completely unheard of.
He must have sensed something was happening there.
He saw the buzz, he saw the independent sales from their mail-out campaign, and he watched the set. Now, here's the really interesting nuance. He liked the catchy stuff. He liked Teenland, which became a big hit later. But the song that actually got them signed, it wasn't the big radio pop hit.
It was Things I Do for Money.
Which is just deeply ironic, given the financial horrors we're about to discuss.
Right.
Chappell loved that song. It had grit. It had reality to it. He signed them largely on the strength of that one track.
So picture the scene. The deal is done. They get flown to Toronto to sign the papers. This is the moment, right? They're about to become major label recording artists on Virgin Records. They go out to celebrate.
And where do they go? They go to the old spaghetti factory.
A classic budget-friendly choice. I mean, you get the bread, the salad, the spumoni ice cream is included. It's a good deal.
It's the celebratory meal of the working class, for sure. But here's the kicker. Don Schmid tells this story. They're all sitting there buzzing with adrenaline about the future. Jay Semko pulls out his credit card to pay for this, very modest pasta dinner. Declined.
Oof, no.
The card is completely maxed out. They have to scrape together all the cash they have on them just to pay the bill. It's such a perfect, painful metaphor. They are sitting on the precipice of fame, signing a contract that involves millions of dollars in turnover.
And they can't buy a plate of spaghetti.
Not even that.
And that dynamic, that fundamental problem, it doesn't actually change once they sign the contract. This is where we really need to get technical. Because I think a lot of our listeners, they hear record deal and they think, big bank account.
It is the exact opposite. A record deal, especially back then, is essentially a massive loan with terrible, terrible terms.
Okay, let's unpack the unrecouped system. Because the sources emphasize this so heavily, Don Schmid and Brian Potvin are very vocal about the fact that despite having a platinum album, Snow in June, and multiple gold albums, they never saw royalty checks from record sales.
Zero. Not a single penny.
Okay, so walk me through the math on that. How do you sell, say, 100,000, 200,000 albums and make $0?
Right. So ideally, it's supposed to work like this. The band gets a royalty rate. Let's be generous and say it was something like 12% or maybe 14% of the retail price back in 1990.
Okay.
So on a $15 CD, the band is theoretically earning maybe $1.50, $1.80 per unit sold.
That sounds okay on the surface. If you sell 100,000 copies, that's what, $150,000? Not bad.
But that's the gross revenue. Now comes the recoupment. Virgin Records is not a charity. They are a bank, and they front the money for everything. And I mean everything.
Like the recording costs?
The recording costs, yeah. And remember, this is the late 80s. You're not recording in a basement with Pro Tools. You're going to Bearsville Studios in New York. You're going to A&M in Los Angeles. These are legendary, expensive residential studios that cost thousands of dollars a day.
Wow.
You've got engineers, producers, travel costs, hotels, per diems for food. The Pikes racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars in recording costs alone before they even sold a single copy.
Then the videos, the music videos.
The videos were the real killer in this era. The Pikes made these cinematic videos. She ain't pretty, girl with a problem. These involved 35mm film, huge lighting crews, directors, catering, makeup, wardrobe.
The whole production.
A single video could cost $50,000 to $100,000 easily.
And who pays for that?
Well, Virgin pays the bill up front, but then they charge it directly to the band's account.
So wait, the band is essentially buying the video for Virgin to use to sell the record that Virgin owns.
Precisely. And here's where the math gets really predatory. The label keeps the wholesale profit from the record. That's the big chunk of the money. But all of the costs, the video, the recording, tour support, everything, are deducted 100% from the band's tiny little royalty slice.
So using our napkin math, if the band makes, say, $1.50 per CD, and they spent $500,000 on making the album and the videos, they have to sell over 330,000 copies just to get back to zero.
Correct. And that's before they make a single dollar of profit for themselves. That is just to pay back the loan to the record company. And if they don't sell that many,
The debt carries over.
the debt carries over. It's called cross-collateralization. If album A loses money, that debt is tacked onto album B. You never, ever get out of the hole unless you sell millions and millions of records.
Potvin had a great quote about this. He mentioned that massive acts like Culture Club were keeping the lights on at Virgin.
Exactly. The mega hits, the Boy Georges, the Rolling Stones, the Genesis-level acts, they pay for the building. Bands like the Northern Pikes, even though they were objectively successful in Canada, were essentially just operating in a debt cycle. They were generating a lot of cash flow for the label, but they were never generating any profit for themselves.
So how did they survive? How did they eat?
Two ways: publishing and touring. The songwriters, so in this case mostly Jay and Brian, would get publishing royalties from radio airplay. That's a separate income stream from record sales. And then the band as a whole made money on the road. Ticket sales, T-shirts.
Right, merch.
But even that money has to pay for the crew, the gas, the bus, the hotels. It's not all profit.
So to eat, they had to be on the road, constantly.
They were hamsters on a wheel. If they stopped touring, the income stopped completely. But the more they toured, the more burnt out and exhausted they got. It's a classic trap.
Which brings us to the breaking point. We're talking 1992, 1993. The tour for Snow in June lasted for 3 years.
Just think about that for a second. 3 years. You were in a metal tube with the same three guys, day in and day out, smelling each other's socks, eating bad food, sleeping in moving vehicles. It just destroys your mental and physical health.
And right at the end of that absolute marathon, they're told they have to go make the next record, Neptune.
And this is where the management, or rather the lack of management, really, really hurt them. They had parted ways with their management team after Snow in June, so they were trying to steer the ship themselves while being completely exhausted. And they made a critical error with Neptune.
The rush job?
The rush job, yeah. They wanted Bob Ludwig to master the album. And Bob Ludwig is a legend. He's the guy who makes the record sound like a proper record. He's the final step.
Okay.
But he was only available during this tiny little window of time. So to meet his schedule, the band compressed the entire recording and mixing process for the album into about 2 months.
For a major label follow-up to a platinum album, that is insanely fast.
It's panic speed. It's totally unsustainable. And you can kind of hear the stress in the process. They were working 18-hour days. They weren't letting the songs breathe or evolve in the studio. They were just getting it done. It was a pressure cooker.
So you have debt, you have total exhaustion, you have a rushed album, you have no manager.
And you have growing interpersonal friction. Merle Brick, the guitarist, he was just done. He'd lost the spark. He didn't want to be on stage anymore. The joy was gone.
June 30th, 1993, Fort Frances, Ontario.
The last show. They didn't announce it to the crowd. It wasn't a big farewell tour.
Yeah.
But the guys in the band, they knew. They walked off stage that night and the band was dead.
And they walked away from a 6-album deal with Virgin. They still owed the label 2 more records.
Yeah.
That is a bold move, to just walk away from a contract like that.
It's a desperate move. It shows you how bad things were. They were choosing their own sanity over the contract.
Yeah.
It's just tough.
And this is where the story should end, right? Canadian band works hard, gets screwed by the label, burns out, quits. It's a tale as old as time in the music industry.
It really is. But the universe had one massive, incredibly ironic plot twist left for them.
The sliding doors moment.
That's exactly it. Mere weeks, and I keep stressing, weeks after they break up, Don Schmidt gets a phone call. It's an agency, and they're looking for a theme song for a new TV pilot.
The show is called Due South.
A show about a ridiculously polite Canadian Mountie solving crimes in Chicago. I mean, it sounds like a joke pitch on paper.
Right. And the band doesn't exist. They hate each other, or at least they desperately need to be apart. But Jay Semko takes the call.
He hears the pitch. Mountie, Chicago. Fish out of water. And he says he wrote the theme song in about 20 minutes. It just poured right out of him.
But they still have to record it as a band.
This is the scene I love to picture. It's October 1993. Don Schmidt has a little home studio. So Jay, Brian, and their keyboardist, Ross Nikifork, they all gather there. The band is officially, legally, emotionally broken up. They are not a unit. But they have to pretend to be the Northern Pikes for one afternoon to cut this track.
It's a ghost band recording a song.
It really is. They record the song, they probably shook hands, said something like, well, good luck with your life, and went home.
Yeah.
They had absolutely no idea they had just recorded what would become the single most successful and widely heard song of their entire career.
Due South premieres in April 1994, and it doesn't just do okay.
It explodes. It becomes the first Canadian-made show to break into U.S. primetime on a major network, CBS. But in the UK, it was a phenomenon. 8 million viewers. Germany, France. It went global.
And the theme song
Is playing in millions and millions of homes every single week. It's the sonic identity of this massive hit show. And the band that played it is sitting at home, retired, broke.
They missed the bus.
They built the bus, they painted the bus, they put gas in the tank, and then they got off right before the bus drove to the Super Bowl.
Wow. So this leads to the inevitable what if section of our deep dive. Brian Potvin, in interviews, admits he has regrets. He wonders if they had just held on for 6 more months, would they have exploded into the atmosphere?
It's a very seductive thought, isn't it? I mean, look at what happened with the Rembrandts and the theme from Friends. That one song made them millionaires many times over. If the Northern Pikes had been an active touring band when Due South hit, they could have toured Europe in arenas. They could have broken the U.S. market in a way that Snow in June never quite did.
But there's a much darker side to this coin, and we need to talk about it honestly. Would that level of fame at that specific moment have destroyed them?
I think the evidence suggests the answer is yes. And the reason for that really centers on Jay Semko.
Jay's been very open about this in later years. He was battling some really serious addiction issues during this period.
Yeah, alcohol and prescription drugs. He was in a spiral. This wasn't just, rock star partying. He was in serious trouble. He even admitted that their big hit song, Girl with the Problem, was actually a veiled song about his own drinking.
Wow.
He was writing these cries for help
Huh.
that were then climbing the pop charts. The irony is just staggering.
So imagine taking a guy in that fragile state who's already completely burnt out from the road, and then suddenly handing him global fame, millions of dollars, and an international press tour.
It's just gasoline on a raging fire.
Yeah.
And Semko has said it himself. He believes that if they hadn't split up when they did, the internal conflict might have produced some brilliant artistic tension for a little while. That toxic energy that sometimes makes for great rock albums, but eventually they would have blown up in our faces.
So the breakup wasn't a failure, it was actually a survival mechanism.
I think it absolutely was. It allowed Jay the space he needed to get sober. And crucially, because the band wasn't touring anymore, Jay was able to pivot his career. He became the composer for the Due South series. He didn't just write the theme, he scored 66 episodes of the show.
That's a real job. That's structure. That's a routine.
Exactly. It gave him structure. He could still be creative, he could still work in music, but he didn't have to be on the tour bus. He didn't have to be in the bar every single night. That job, scoring that show, probably saved his life.
So the band missed the ride, but the humans survived.
Which brings us to the wilderness years. Because for the other guys in the band, it wasn't quite as smooth a transition.
Right. And we have to talk about the contract limbo. This is just another nasty music business detail. Even though they quit the band, Virgin still had first dibs on anything they did solo.
They still technically owed the label albums. So Virgin's position was, okay, we'll give you a small budget to go record some solo demos. If we like them, we'll release them as part of your contract.
So Jay, Brian, and Don are all off recording these solo songs, trying to start their new careers.
And Virgin passes on all of them. Nope, don't hear a hit. No, not this one. But while Virgin is deciding, the band members can't take those songs to any other label. Their hands are tied. They're just frozen. It completely stalled any momentum they might have had.
And this leads to Brian Potvin's Detour. This is the one that really sticks with me. The guy who wrote She Ain't Pretty, a song that literally everyone in Canada knows, ends up working a desk job.
He becomes an A&R rep for Polygram Records.
Talk about going behind enemy lines. That's incredible.
It's fascinating psychology, isn't it? He's now the guy in the suit. He's sitting at a desk, looking at spreadsheets, scouting new bands. And he described a real darkness during this time. He wasn't creating anymore. He was seeing the industry from the inside, seeing exactly how the sausage was made, and realizing just how bad their own deal had been.
It must have been surreal to be signing bands to deals that he knew were basically traps while he himself was still technically in debt to his old label.
It killed his spirit for a while. He stopped playing music almost entirely. And Don Schmidt, he went back to Saskatoon and started a new band called the Non-Hapners.
The Non-Hapners. That is the most self-deprecating, cynical band name I have ever heard.
It's hilarious, and it's heartbreaking all at once, isn't it? We aren't happening. He built a home studio, and he kept working, but that name tells you exactly where his head was at during that time.
And Merle Brick, the original guitarist.
Merle took the cleanest break of all of them. He eventually just retired from the music industry entirely. He got a stable job working for the city of Saskatoon. He chose security. He chose a life where the paycheck actually clears every 2 weeks.
So by the late 90s, the Northern Pikes are basically a memory, a Canadian rock footnote.
Until the label, the very same label that held them in debt for a decade, decides they want to make a quick buck.
Right. 1999. Virgin decides to release Hits and Assorted Secrets, a greatest hits compilation.
And of course, they asked the band, hey, can you guys maybe do some press, maybe play a few shows to help promote this thing?
So 6 years after the bitter breakup, they get back in a room together.
And what they found was that the magic was still there. The chemistry was there. But the context had completely changed. They weren't trying to make it anymore. They weren't trying to get on U.S. radio. They were just playing the songs because they genuinely liked playing the songs.
The pressure was gone.
And that changed everything. That short little promotional tour turned into a permanent reunion. They realized they actually liked playing together when their entire livelihood didn't depend on cracking the Billboard Top 40.
But the lineup does evolve over time. Merle retires for good in 2006, and then in 2017, they make a really interesting addition to the band. Kevin Kane joins.
Kevin Kane from the Grapes of Wrath.
That is a massive crossover event for Canadian rock fans of that era. It's like if, I don't know, Pearl Jam added a guy from Soundgarden. It's a big deal.
And it makes so much sense musically. The Grapes and the Pikes both have that sort of melodic, almost prairie western vibe. Kevin fits the sound perfectly, but he also adds a new texture, a new voice. And with him, they didn't just tour, they started recording new music again. They put out Forest of Love in 2019.
And then Time to Time in 2023, which brings us full circle back to Snow in June. They actually re-recorded the entire album acoustically. Why do bands do that? Is it just like pure nostalgia?
Well, there's an artistic reason, and there's a very savvy business reason. Artistically, they're older, they're better musicians, they don't want to just shout the songs anymore.
Yeah.
They want to explore the nuances in the songwriting. But the business reason, it goes right back to that original terrible contract. They don't own the master recordings to the original Snow in June. Virgin, which is now Universal Music, owns those forever. But they do own the new recordings they just made. So by re-recording them, they reclaim a little bit of ownership over their own history. It's the Taylor Swift strategy, just on a smaller Canadian scale.
So let's look at the Northern Pikes now, in 2026. They're celebrating 42 years, they're on tour. What does the business model look like today?
It is flipped completely on its head. In 1990, the album was the product, and the tour was the advertisement. You tour to sell records. In 2026, the music is the advertisement, and the tour is the product.
Because of streaming.
Yeah, exactly. Don Schmidt is very clear-eyed about this. He knows that Spotify pays fractions of a penny per stream. He says a $10 monthly subscription is nothing compared to the $15 per CD that fans used to spend. But he accepts it.
Why?
Because it keeps the songs in people's ears. It means a 25-year-old can discover She Ain't Pretty on a random playlist, like it, and then go buy a $50 ticket to see them play live.
And the band keeps the ticket money.
They keep the ticket money, they keep the merch money, they keep the VIP package money. They are finally actually solvent because they've cut out the corporate middleman. They aren't unrecouped to a major label anymore. They are, for all intents and purposes, small business owners.
It's that transition from rock star to working musician.
And honestly, working musician is a much more sustainable and probably happier job title.
So we have to deliver a verdict on our initial question. The mission of this deep dive was to decide if making it was actually dangerous for them.
I think the evidence is overwhelming and clear. The success they had in the 90s was predatory. The business model was designed to take the value they created and leave them with all the debt. It was a trap.
And the split, the timing of missing the due south wave.
It looks like a tragedy on paper. Oh, they missed their one big break. But I would argue it was the only successful move they had left to make. If they had ridden the due south wave at that moment, Jay Semko likely wouldn't be here today. The friendships would have been permanently destroyed by the pressure. There would be no reunion tour in 2026.
So they sacrificed the peak to save the foundation of the band?
That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah. You can burn really bright for a year and then burn out completely, or you can dim the lights, fix the faulty wiring, and keep the house standing for another 30 years. They chose the house.
And now when you see them play, Brian Potvin says it's for pleasure and fun.
He mentioned that when fans come up to them after a show and say their music got them through a divorce or death in the family or just a hard time, that is the currency now.
Right.
The job part, the charts, the sales figures, it just doesn't matter anymore. They won the long game by surviving the short one.
So here's a final thought for you to take with you today. We are conditioned to view a band breaking up as a failure. We think, oh, they just couldn't hack it, or they had creative differences. But in the case of the Northern Pikes, breaking up right before their biggest commercial opportunity wasn't a failure at all. It was an act of preservation. Sometimes you have to stop the machine to survive the ride.
That's it.
So I want you to do something today. Go stream the Due South theme. Or go listen to She Ain't Pretty. But listen to it not just as a catchy 90s hit, but as a survival story. Think about the invisible economics and the very real human struggle that was happening just behind that melody.
It sounds different when you know what it costs them.
It really does. Thanks for going on this journey with us. We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Take care, everyone.